Welcome to Attainable Green. I'm Jess, and today we're going to be going over some blooms that I have for the winter season. So let's get started. If you've been following along on this channel, you know that a couple of weeks back we had the Global Virtual Orchid Show, and I shared a good portion of the blooms that I had in that video. There have been a few blooms that have occurred since then, so I'm going to show those first before diving into all the other ones, and I'll discuss them in more detail. So the first one is the Zygonisia Murasaki Komachi Blue Hawaii. Now this Zygopetalum hybrid has been fantastic. I got it last year, and this year it's putting up 2 spikes and 6 flowers. And it is the first time I've seen it bloom, and I love it. It has a great scent. It's very similar to the standard Zygopetalum, but I think it's a little bit sweeter and less peppery, which makes it a little bit more pleasant for me to enjoy, and it just looks quite fantastic. I'm going to go into more detail about the care of this plant in a separate video, but for now I'll just share with you the flowers. So the next plant is the Masdevallia Confetti. This is my first year growing Masdevallias, and it has been a huge learning curve. I have not been the best with growing them, and if you've been following along on my updates, you would know that some plants just didn't make it. Now that it is in the winter season and the temperatures have definitely cooled down, and I've been keeping up with the watering more, some of the Masdevallias have been doing a lot better. And this one in particular actually flowered. It has 1 flower on it. It had a previous spike that tried to bloom earlier, but it just didn't do well. Now this plant might be misidentified because the Masdevallia Confetti is actually supposed to be pink and yellow, and this one is white and yellow. Nonetheless, it's been a sign of success that I was able to get this plant to bloom, and it has a fragrance as well. When the fragrance first started, I would say it kind of had a chemical solvent kind of smell. After about a week, I think the fragrance has changed and it's a little bit more nuanced, and I think now it smells a little bit more like cream soda. Supposedly the Masdevallia Confetti is supposed to smell like root beer, so cream soda, root beer, sort of similar. So the next plant is the Phalaenopsis tetraspis, and this plant is probably in its 3rd or 4th flush for the year, and it's finally slowing down to give it a rest during the winter season. It didn't have as many flowers as the first initial flush, but I think this plant has been great. I love that it's been in season and been in bloom for the majority of the year, and it's probably my favorite summer blooming fowl. This plant has a slight floral fragrance, kind of grassy more than floral, but I think it's really enjoyable. The next plant is the Phalaenopsis bellina variety murtoniana. Now this is considered a wild strain of the bellina, so I think the presentation of the flower and flower color changes with the temperature. The scent of this plant is very fruity, very sweet, and I think that's one of the things that people love about bellinas is for their scent. So the next set of plants are my Paphiopedilums. I have my Paphiopedilum fairrieanum, which is a species, and I got this one in bloom. It just looks really lovely. It has 2 small little growths with it, and the flowers last like quite long. I think it's probably going on to 2 months now, and I just cannot stop looking at it. I cannot stop touching it. It kind of has this kind of velvety, fuzzy feel to it, very velvety and smooth. So it is a great kind of fuzzy fairrieanum. On the other side of the spectrum, my other Paphiopedilum, it's a tree of Enzan hybrid. It is kind of your standard bulldog paph. It has huge, large, round, waxy flowers. So you pair the 2 Paphiopedilums together. One is fuzzy and small, compact, and the other one is kind of large and round and waxy, very full substance. And next are the Ctsms. I had 2 Ctsms that have been in bloom this season. The first one is the Monnierara Millennium Magic, and the second one is the Ctsm Portagee Star crossed with tigrinum. And both plants kind of have 2 different presentations, but I am just really excited to grow Ctsms this year, and I think I'm looking forward to a couple more in the next year. Some of them are in spike right now, so it'll take time for them to come to bloom. The Millennium Magic is that kind of black orchid flower. It kind of has kind of a cup shape, but I find it really fascinating, very beautiful. And for its first bloom, I think it's quite stunning. For the Ctsm tigrinum, it's kind of that white spotted flower with a pale yellow lip, and I really like the look at this plant. I love how floriferous it is, and it's pretty easy to care for, and I'm just really excited to see how a lot of my tigrinum hybrids will bloom out, because I just want to see how these spotted characteristics will take on and how these plants will mature and grow. So next are my Zygopetalums. Now, half of my Zygopetalum collection has bloomed this season. So the fall winter time is definitely the time where my Zygos are blooming and they really enjoy it. I had my Adelaide Meadows hybrid in bloom, and I also had the snowbird Kaila also in bloom, and the Murasaki Komachi. So 3 Zygopetalums in the fall season, and I am loving them. Each one is a little bit different because it has different parentage, but I am loving all of them. Each one has a different scent. I would say that the Adelaide Meadows has the strongest peppery floral scent, and the Murasaki Komachi has that kind of sweeter note to it, so it's not as peppery or as strong. The snowbird is kind of in between, so it's a little bit peppery, a little bit floral, and kind of like the best of both worlds. So next is my Miltoniopsis Lillian Nakamoto. Now this plant I got in bloom during Halloween, and I definitely enjoyed the flowers before they faded, and then now it's kind of reset so that the new growth can start, and hopefully I can be able to rebloom this plant to show it off in all its glory later in the year. The next plant is the Oncidopsis Nelly. I got this plant in bloom, and it is a stunning plant. I know everyone says that Nelly are just this fantastic red flowered Oncidium, and I can see why people are so fascinated and so drawn to this plant. Right now, I'm just going to enjoy the blooms, and then when they fade, I'll take off the spike and set it for its new growth next year. The next plant are my Oncidium Twinkles. So I have the Oncidium Tsiku Marguerite and the Oncidium Red Fantasy. The two that I have are very different. The Oncidium Tsiku Marguerite has kind of a more uniform presentation of flowers. Like it has a fairly tall stalk, a couple of branches, and the flowers are larger and they're more spread apart, giving it a kind of cleaner look. The Oncidium Twinkle Red Fantasy, on the other hand, the one I got came in spike, so the flowers were a little bit shorter, more compact, and they kind of grew a little bit overlapping on top of each other. I'm going to grow this on, and maybe next year we'll see if the bloom improves, if the display improves. But I just love Twinkles because they have a great vanilla scent, and it's perfect for the holiday season because it just, to me, smells like sugar cookies. Now the next plant is a Portagee hybrid. This is the LC Tokyo Magic crossed with Portagee Martha Clark. Now this plant is considered a project plant with high desert orchids, so a bunch of people are growing this plant as well, and we're just kind of seeing how these plants bloom out. For my particular plant, the plant has come out with this kind of sunset pinky peach coral color as the base with the red lip. So I am really interested to see how the colors will develop later on and see if we can bring out more of those reddish pinkish tones. Now the last plant is the Orangus Biloba. I shared a profile of this plant in a separate video, but I really am liking the Orangus plants. The Orangus Biloba has been really easy for me to bloom, and granted it was a mature blooming size plant from Orchid Trail. This plant is so floriferous, and I love the scent. Although the flowers are fairly short-lived, I think the longest all the flowers lasted was about 2 weeks. When it is in full bloom, it is quite the showstopper. So I'm hoping that I can continue to grow this on well, and we'll see more blooms in the future. So that is the list of all the plants that are blooming during this fall-winter season in my collection. I'm starting to get a little bit of momentum when it comes to a lot of my plants. Either they're adapting to my environment well, and so they're able to rebloom, or I'm just understanding these plants better, so instead of dying on me, they're actually thriving and blooming. So I will try to continue this series into 2021, and maybe I'll break it down by month, we'll see. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel, Attainable Green, to follow along on my orchid growing journey. If you want to see more updates of what's in bloom, click on the playlist, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!